Hello, this is the Smiling Conscious Traveler podcast. I'm Ottmar Brauniger from Austria, and my guest today is Rania Odaymat from Ghana. Let me introduce her to you with her own words. I am the grain and the field, the drop and the wave, a thought made manifest, a crack in the whole of all that is dark and all that is bright. I am not mother, daughter, wife, sister, friend, partner, human explorer, seeker, learner, creator, collaborator. I work as an artist, a creative coach, an art curator, and sometimes as a stylist and creative director. Welcome, Rania, to my show.
Thank you very much, Ottmar. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on my show. So, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the country where you come from, because a lot of people might not even know where it is. So, where is Ghana? And I have another interesting question. What is Ghana?
Ghana is a country in West Africa. It's between Togo and the Ivory Coast. In the top, there is Burkina Faso, and we also share a border with Nigeria. It used to be a British colony called the Gold Coast. And before that, it was the Ashanti Kingdom. So as you see, Ghana is only the most recent incarnation of this place, which scientists say is one of the closest to ground zero in the world. We're very close to the equator. Ghana got its name after our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, worked peacefully for independence. We were the first African country or colony to get our independence in peace. And what are we? Just like any other place, we're diverse. There are many, many languages in Ghana, many different topographies. We have one of the biggest rivers in West Africa, the Volta River. We are a country that is very rich in human resources, and yet we haven't invested enough in the most important resource, which is our human capital. We're a country where there is lots of human magic, but also lots of waste and human potential that is lost. We have a lot to do to grow. Does that answer your question?
The answer is perfectly fine. It's really interesting how you talked about the human potential. Tell me a little bit more about this human potential. What you find in Ghana?
I think our human potential mainly has to do with our educational system. We haven't invested enough in empowering our children, in teaching them to think critically outside of the box, to believe in themselves and believe that their direction is up to them, to find creative solutions, to be confident enough to have their own initiative. Colonialism stops, but the mentality and the codependency that comes from it takes a long time to change, and it doesn't change unless we work on healing it consciously. And a big part of that is the educational system, which prepares us or doesn't. So this is what I mean by, we have a lot of room to grow, and we need to invest more in our human capital. We don't value our creativity and our culture enough, but ultimately they are the greatest agents of growth and change.
The people on my audio podcast might not see it, that my son Liam just joined us.
Yes.
Yeah, but you might hear him now. And as we talk about creativity, I think he joined us at the perfect moment. Because I think that we can learn a lot from children about creativity.
Oh, yes. Yeah, look at Liam. He's just being creative right now. He wants to join the conversation, and he's coming up with so many different ways of joining it.
Yes, he doesn't understand the language perfectly well. He is joining with his language.
Well, what is language? Most of what is said is not sometimes not what it's heard. They say that most communication happens, maybe 70% or more, happens beyond language, from body language, from sound, from expressions, other things.
That is exactly what Liam is showing us. Yeah, I have a question which is a little bit connected with traveling, because my podcast is called The Smiling Conscious Traveler. So I wondered if you had the chance in the past to travel.
Oh yes, I've traveled a lot in my lifetime, and sometimes repeatedly to some of the same places. I think in history they used to say the traveler is the seeker and the wise person. Not to say that every person who travels is wise or learns, but that the opportunity is there if you want it. One of the ways that I love to learn when I travel is to lose myself and walk wherever I am, and not to always make a plan. So some of the greatest ways I've discovered places, for example, is through connection and conversation with taxi drivers. I remember that I was going to San Francisco for the first time, and I decided to join my brother, who had some meetings in San Francisco for 2 days. It was very short, to discover the whole city. So I thought to myself, am I going to do the regular stuff, go to the Golden Gate Bridge, do all the other stuff I would normally do, take a tour or ask people? And then I said, no, it's too short a time. No matter what I get, I want it to be meaningful. And so I went on the street and to a place where you could find a row of taxis. And I started talking to a few of the guys over there and waiting for that intuition and that connection. And then finally, one of them, his approach and his answers intrigued me. And I asked him, I said, I'm here, I have this day, and tomorrow is going to be spent with my brother and his colleagues. So, and I'd like to discover the city. How long have you been living here? And he told me he had been there for about 40 years. And I said, well, I'm putting myself in your hands, no matter how many hours it takes. Just make me see the city through your own eyes and your own experience. And so I spent the next 6 hours with him discovering his own experience of the place. And it was very eye-opening and very special. And so I always, yes, sometimes I'll do the regular things, or for example, if I'm in London, I love the theater and all kinds of theater, you know, it can not only the mainstream. So yes, I'll do things like that, but I also like to go to the places where not a lot of people want to go to, or have those experiences that are outside of the main way and that involve other people, because I feel there's something always a bit magical in that and not very obvious.
It's actually the approach what I go, like when I go on travels, I want to experience like have an experience like the local people. And that's what you were just telling me, that you asked someone who lived there for 40 years in San Francisco to show you the city and to show you the places what he thinks are worth to see.
So he took me to the beach where he goes with his own family, and he showed me all the other beaches. And then he took me to his own residential area. And then he showed me the high-end residential area and explained some things to me that I would never have gotten, you know, just from reading an article or going in the same way. About, for example, Black people in San Francisco not being able or not allowed to actually purchase land in that area. Although what you know about San Francisco is that it's a place that is very open to, alternative thinking and civil rights and all of that. So to me, that was very shocking, for example. He showed me the little corners where he had good memories. And he also said, you know, I need to take you around sunset. He took me to the Golden Gate Bridge. And he said, I don't care if this doesn't get old. And this is also part of my San Francisco. So I just, you know, surrendered. I put myself in his hands, and for him to, and I got so many human stories about him, his family, his work, his colleagues, the kind of things that mattered to him, whether he felt that he was achieving his dreams, all the limitations that living in this space put on him, but also the advantages.
Yeah, that is, I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge is obviously a spot what everyone visits in San Francisco, but you experienced it maybe with different eyes. Because
yes, you're supposed to go there with your lover. But I mean, you know, but it was very interesting for him to tell me about his story of love and all the lovers that he had brought to the bridge.
That is the interesting part. So what does creativity mean for you?
For me, it means being close to the life force and the energy of life and aliveness. I think we're all created, but one of the most amazing things is that we also have an inner creator, which we can have access to. And that inner creator that we have resonates very closely with everything else that is alive and in a constant cycle of creation and creativity, whether it is a forest or our own bodies, the cells that keep on dying and being reborn, new ones, whether it's the ocean, whether it's the migrations of the birds or the tides. So that is what it means to me to be creative, to be in touch with that aspect of myself.
This is very interesting for me. Is I never saw creativity like this in this way. And actually, I was talking in other episodes about this already, that I got, maybe I labeled myself too, but I got very often the label as a technician, as an engineer. That's what I studied. I studied electronics. I taught myself how to program, to be a software engineer. But at the same time, I was asking myself all the time, am I creative? And this way of looking at it, how you presented it to me now, that of exploring myself while being creative, right? While being in the creative process. That is a very interesting aspect. Because honestly, my answer was not only I am creative, but each and every one of us is creative. Just most of us covered it maybe somehow, this creativity, or it got covered up.
And so, being an artist is only one part of being creative. Being creative is much more. Obviously, you cannot be an artist if you're not creative and if you're not in touch with your creative self. But having a child is being creative. Looking at things from a multidimensional perspective, not only from a perspective of intellect, but also from a perspective of intuition, from a perspective of spirit, from a perspective of sound and resonance, from a perspective, when you look at things, you're using your creativity. When you're finding uncommon solutions to problems, you're using your creativity. So everyone is creative, and Sir Ken Robinson talks about it in his book, The Element. And he says that when they asked kindergartners who is creative, most of them raised their hands. But when they asked college kids the same question, most of them didn't. So what happened in between? School happened, and our educational system still overemphasizes intellectual intelligence over consciousness or other forms of intelligence. And it actually makes it lesser and stigmatizes it. So this is why we tend to repress or divorce ourselves from that aspect of who we are as we grow up in general.
That is somehow a recurring theme in my last couple of days, this educational system. And obviously also because I have two kids who are just starting in life, starting with kindergarten, and I think a lot about it. How do I want to raise my kids, and how do I want my kids to get educated? And actually, I got a very interesting explanation today. It's from my mentor, Brandy Ridgway, who actually influenced me very heavily on the creation of my podcast. But let's talk first about this video, what I watched from him today. He talked about the educational system, and he talked actually also what education actually means, the word education. It's somehow like digging a well and finding the water and knowing that there is more water down there if I dig deeper. And yeah, that is what means education. I'm digging for the water and I'm looking for more water to come out there. And that's how it should be, how we should teach our children. The creativity is there already. You just have to give them the chance to prepare the field that they can be creative. But you have to let them play.
And play and to unlock it. It's already there, as you said. It's just in the seeking and the guidance
Mm.
will get you to unlock what is already there.
Yeah, that is very important, that you don't stop them from being creative, because while you are teaching them what you think is important, they might not be interested in this stuff, what you're telling them. They might want to explore something else. And yeah, that is something what really keeps me busy thinking the last days and weeks.
Are you familiar with Khalil Gibran's poem on children?
No.
It's from his very famous book, The Prophet. It's one of the most read books in history. And it starts like this: your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. You should read it. It's amazing, because it talks about the fact that, they are from you, but they don't belong to you. He says it in his own words. And he says, you're the archer, but they're the ones going to fly. And so many, this poem contains so many insights on parenting and education and your role as a parent and as a guide.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That is really helpful. And I think it's not only helpful to me, but also to all the people who are listening to this podcast. Because there are obviously a lot of parents out there, and I hope a lot of parents will listen to that, what you just said. That is really has the potential. What is the intention? The intention of this podcast is for me to change the world. And it has the potential to change the world, what you just said. If you really not only think about it and contemplate about this, but also that you do it as a parent, that you guide your children and that you give them the ability to fly. So there's something else what interests me about creativity, especially when would you say you were always creative, or was it, or you considered yourself always creative, or was there a point when you discovered your creativity in life?
I think I was always creative, although I didn't know what to be creative meant.
That is actually what I meant with my question. Yes. When did you discover what it means actually?
I think, when I discovered what it meant, I was probably, maybe in my first art class in school. But before that, I remember even as a child, I would always, ask what if. I would always try to do things in a different way, or I questioned everything. I would explore and not listen and try to do things my own way, and just try and try. And it drove my mom crazy, because to her, I was so much trouble. I just wasn't that child who, you could contain, or who could be, but I didn't know at the time that it was being creative. And I think I was lucky in school, although my parents did not value that. And I got a lot of negative feedback on that, which made me feel bad about myself. I had the privilege of having teachers and mentors at school who really appreciated it and helped me grow and develop that aspect of myself. But they were outliers. they were those sort of teachers. Like the first one, I was about 9 to 11 years old, and he had his own difficulties. He struggled with a disease which didn't have very good treatment at the time, and he was a part-time photographer. It was his own therapy in a way. So it wasn't part of like the curriculum or the school approach. It was just part of the life journey of a teacher who loved teaching and who did it from an intuitive place and who knew a lot of pain and tried to overcome his own pain and obstacles and gained a lot of wisdom because of it.
Yeah, that I got somehow lost in your words, and I'm listening, and now I lost a little bit the thread, I have to say. But let me continue like this. I'm still thinking about creativity because it's also a topic which goes through my whole life, and a lot of people are wondering maybe why, because they see me still as the technician, as the engineer, and it's something what is very important to me too, and I think you mentioned it before already. How does nature affect you in your creative work?
Oh, it affects me a lot. When I see the sky, I relax. When I told my husband a long time ago, I don't care how big my home is, or ultimately, of course, like, yes, you appreciate if you have a great home and all of that, but to me, I cared about having a home, even if it was a room, but with a view, where I could have access to growth and green, and where I could see the sky. And in my own garden, when you plant the right type of trees, you get so many birds, and you hear so many different types of conversations and song. And it's very inspiring because it keeps you, it's soothing to the soul, but at the same time, it keeps your intellect alive, trying to communicate, trying to understand, trying to relate, and looking at how the plants are evolving, what is falling, what is growing anew. And there are studies that have been done about looking at the horizon or the sky and how it relaxes your nerves. It gives you a sense of calm. And I think in terms of also, when we think in terms of walls or closed spaces, it sort of creates barriers inside of us in our own minds. But when we can experience what is open, it also helps us to open all our windows and our doors in a way, if we want to.
Wow. I really, there's so many things what I experience while I'm listening to you. Of course, I experience them in my head at the moment, but I have all these pictures. When you say opening the doors, opening the windows, and yeah, it makes so much sense. I'm sitting here in my house at the moment, and I have all these walls around me. As soon as I go outside, I feel this freedom already. That I'm also expanding my consciousness and my mind, and also I was thinking about when I'm going to the woods, especially there, I feel very relaxed. All these sounds and noises, what I hear, all these trees, the green, it has such a calming influence on me. And yeah, there came now so many pictures to my mind while you were talking about this. Also, it was almost, I just experienced our interview so far like a meditation, because you have a tendency to talk very slow. I actually talk most of the time very slow too, but I adapted now to your pace. And somehow I have the feeling like it's a meditation, but it's also something that we share our wisdom.
But you have that effect as well, Otmar.
Yeah.
I think, you know, every meeting, every conversation carries a little bit of both. I wouldn't have exactly the same conversation with someone else, and you wouldn't have the same conversation with someone else.
That is true.
If we allow ourselves to be in the moment and to really connect to the other person, there's always a unique kind of connection that cannot be repeated from person to person. And it's because we have that in common, because I felt that from you, I feel it from your energy. It feels natural to communicate in this way with you.
Yeah, it's also about what I'm saying a lot in my videos about being present. When I'm talking to you or when I ask you a question, I want to be present to what you tell me. But not only what you tell me, also that's why I think it's also important that we have at least this video, that I can see your body language. And honestly, I would love to have every conversation in person, because there's so much what the video doesn't show us. Especially I, as an engineer of electronics, I know how much a video gets compressed when it goes through all these digital lines. And this compression means that we are losing information.
Exactly. We're doing the best that we can under the circumstances, but I very much agree with you. This moment right now, what we're talking about, reminds me of an anecdote with Pablo Picasso. And apparently he was once on a train going somewhere, and there was an old man sitting next to him on the train. And so this old man starts looking at him, and after some time he gets his courage and goes to ask him a question. And he says, I'd like to know something. Why don't you paint real people? And then Picasso says, what do you mean? And so the old man tries to explain and goes, you know, people as they really are. And then Picasso thinks about it and tells him, I still don't understand what you're asking me. And so it goes back and forth like that. And the old man gets frustrated at one point, takes out a photograph from his pocket and puts it in Picasso's face and say, see, this is what I mean. Like this, my wife, this is what she really looks like. And so Picasso takes the photograph, holds it, turns it around, and looks at him and says, isn't she too small and too flat to look exactly like your wife?
Wow. I knew exactly what you were talking about in this story and what Picasso was talking about, but I didn't expect this ending.
It's exactly what you were saying about video. It's not the same because we lose the energy. We lose so much.
I mean, even I don't see, I don't see when you are blinking with your eyes, because sometimes maybe the compression from the video might make it disappear, because that's how video compression works, that it filters out things what the engineer who invented this thing thought is not important, so that you can reduce the data through this line. But every blinking of the eye is important when I talk to you, when I look into your face, because it might tell me, okay, that's how she feels. And as we just figured out before, a lot of our communication is through body language. And there's a lot of things missing in this video is smell. Yeah.
Smell
Maybe
and
also
touch.
touch. Yeah, that's what I was looking
Look,
for.
touch is the biggest organ out of the 5 senses. The biggest one is touch because it covers the whole skin.
Yeah.
It's the first to be born, I think, and the last to die. And
I mean, look at children, how they discover the world. They take everything in their mouth because it's the most sensitive part of the body. So that's how they experience the world. And yeah, that was missing too. Not only smell, the taste. Now I realized it when I said a child takes everything in his mouth. And yeah, taste and smell, I think, is very closely related, these two senses. Because actually we experience it when we have a flu or when we have a blocked nose. The food doesn't taste the same when we don't smell how it smells.
Doesn't it even interfere with your thinking? Me, it interferes with my thinking. I feel as if my head is blocked. You know?
That is, yeah, it interferes with a lot of things. But yeah, the thinking, I mean, especially when you are sick and you have headache and not only blocked nose, but it really blurs all the senses. But I'm still thinking about something, and I want to say it now here. Because a lot of people might say, but isn't this to be supposed an interview? No, not necessarily. I asked my audience what they want to hear, and some of them said they love conversational interviews. So that's what I'm going for. It's a conversation. And yeah, now I lost again my thread, but it's perfectly fine. I think that is important, the most important thing. Yeah, there was something else what I wanted to say. Traveling and getting in personal contact, because that's what we were just talking about. I called it the smiling conscious traveler. And yeah, there's still, okay, smiling, we experienced it today already. Consciousness too, there's still this traveling part a little bit missing. And I want to travel, and I want to meet the people there where they live, and there I want to interview the people. So I even asked myself, how am I going to do this in those crazy times with COVID and all these lockdowns? And the answer is simple. I will find a way. I always found a way to do that. And maybe one day I might give you a call and tell you, I'm in Ghana, can we meet?
I would love that. It would be my pleasure. Anytime you make it, let me know a little bit ahead of time so I make sure I'm not traveling myself. And it would be a pleasure.
That is actually how I'm doing it. I do everything very spontaneously in my life. And some people are overwhelmed with this, but other people, they love it. Mm-hmm. And I guess the same way we did it now with our interview, I asked you, I actually said that I feel like I should ask you. And you said yes, and that is how I love to do a lot of things in my life. So there's something what you told me, and it really interests me very much what that means, actually. You told me that you have a ritual which is called deep play.
Mm.
And what does it mean, actually? I don't
There are,
know.
I call it deep play. To me is the art of dancing outside of yourself. There are books and articles written about it. To me, deep play is very important because if we look at the history of human ingenuity, we study civilization from that standpoint, you'll come to realize that so many of the world's inventions, such as glass, such as plastics, such as aluminum, so many others I can give you, were not made on the job. They were not made because somebody had to perform something. They were made because people were indulging in a passion that they had. And most of them were not made for something functional. It was because it was meaningful. So the first glass that we know of, for example, that was invented in ancient Egypt was for spiritual reasons, because people were driven to create something to enshroud the bodies of their dead and to value them and to help them go into the afterlife. If you look on the internet, you won't get Alexander Parks as the first person who created plastics, but he was actually, if you dig deeper, you will find out. And he first made plastics because he was trying to create beautiful objects and sculptures that were decorative and that could be used for personal decorative purposes, and outside of it, not to be used in industry or on for work. And so many things. And I really believe that when we play, look, if you watch a child, you'll notice that they learn so much from deep play. And when they play, they go into flow mode. They're totally engaged in the moment. And they put their all in it. And when you allow yourself to be in that flow mode, it opens your receptivity and your learning in a way that is very special.
I think I'm just in
And
this flow
also,
mode.
and also it provides you with a safe environment to lose or to make mistakes. And yet, the lessons and the memories are imprinted in the same way as a real experience on your central nervous system. So it's a great way to relax, it's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to pursue your passions. Of course, I mean, like with everything else, if it's outside of balance, if I'm going to spend my whole day deep playing, then yes, other areas of my life or psyche or spirit, are going to suffer, because dynamic balance is the basis of everything. But so this is what I mean by deep play, why it's such an important part of my process and also my healing.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about this healing. Why did you mention it, and why is it important to you in your life?
Oh, it's important, I think, because we're all broken in a way or another. And I had a very intimate experience with my brokenness about 17 years ago. Throughout my childhood, throughout my teenage years, you know how you develop cracks, but you're not necessarily aware of them. And then at one point, you have so many cracks that the littlest collision or hit can bring everything crumbling down. And I think, when you grow up, we're sensitive to the pain bodies that our parents carry. We're sensitive to how they value us, they value the world. We're sensitive to the kind of love that we know or whether we find acceptance or not, we're sensitive to a lot of conditioning that might be harmful to how we experience who we are in a broader sense. And so I think all of that, and you're taught to not be vulnerable, not to show that, to be strong and to keep on going and all of that. And you keep on doing it until you can't do it. And so when I crumbled, there was a choice to be made. I had a choice to make. Either that was it for me, or something had to give. Something had to give means that I had to start back from zero and re-examine everything, my conditioning, my self-image, and just start a process of change and growth by keeping the things that I felt were healthy for me. And some of the things that were unhealthy, but that, would not necessarily, because it can't be perfect, but also letting go of all that was self-destructive and hurtful in terms of ideas about the self and the roles, about gender, all of these things.
I wanted to say, actually, in the beginning, don't you think that this were heavily influenced by your upbringing?
We all are. And yes, I am. I think but the difference with before was I wasn't happy and I didn't embrace myself. I didn't allow myself to be the best that I could be or to shine because it was considered wrong. I had to, I was taught that, let's say, from a gender perspective, a woman is self-sacrificing. A woman should not speak up because it's considered manly or aggressive. A woman should not ask for anything, etc. So many things. It's also partly is the educational system that over focuses on logic and the power of the mind. But at one point, over intellectualizing things and overthinking things, no matter how smart you are, can leave you extremely ignorant as to your own needs, deep needs, and as to your own dimension as, a human explorer and so, that process of relearning, let's say, and seeking, that's where the deep play, because as a child, obviously I knew how to play, and then it was conditioned out of me. And I felt, although I kept having that need to play, but whenever I would do it, the reactions, I would be self-conscious about the reactions, like, is she crazy? Or this is not appropriate for and you're not strong enough to, so you don't do it really. But then at that time, I realized, no, I don't care anymore. I'm not going to sacrifice being true to myself to what somebody else thinks.
I just remembered your first video when you were talking about crazy. I had the same experience in the first moment. Oh my God, this woman is strange.
And it's okay.
At the same time, it captivated me. I wanted to know more. What is behind this whole appearance? And it was really fascinating for me from the first moment. And I wanted, to experience it. What do you want? Actually, it was somehow I also wanted to know what you want to tell me with that, with your presentation.
Part of it is deep play. Bringing that spirit, putting a smile on your face, or making you think or ask yourself, what the hell is happening? Also, part of it is visual storytelling and performance. All of the things that I want to say, but not necessarily talk about verbally, because it would take too long and then it would be boring and it wouldn't have such an impact, you know. Just put it in there as part of the conversation.
You just gave me an idea when you say it visually. Because actually we are doing a podcast interview now and it's verbally, obviously. And I think that, yeah, I should put more, I should combine it maybe more with visuals. And obviously I said it before already that I'm recording also the video from our interview, so I will not only post it as an audio podcast, I will post it also as a video. But I will create something out of that, more like short video sequences out of that. That was my idea when you were talking about visuals. Because long conversations are interesting, but they can be boring sometimes too.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I just said, I don't want to bore my listeners. I would say we talked quite a lot about creativity today already, and I want to wrap it up. But before I do that, I want to talk about your podcast for a little bit. So it's called Creative in Accra, I remember. I had to think for a second because I didn't write it down, the title, but it was Creative in Accra. And tell me a little bit about it. What is it about?
So the mission behind it is actually to inspire creative growth. The idea came because it's a little bit of an expansion of what I've been doing as a creative coach for the past 16 years, but in a more public way. And of course, with some differences, because doing one-on-one coaching is not the same as having conversations with someone else, you know, public conversations. But I felt that we're living in a time where there's too much negative energy. There's too many destructive forces. And I know creativity to be a constructive force. And so there's a need to have more of that. So the idea came to me to have these series of conversations, and now I'll be adding solo episodes as well, that where we discuss together the creative process, what interferes with it, what is human ingenuity, how do you deal with your process, how do you come through it, what are the obstacles that you face, how transformative is it, what is the value of relationships and collaboration to growth. And of course, there is a emphasis that changes from person to person, depending on what type of creative they are. And so, yeah, that's so far, that's where it's coming from.
Just came something else to my mind. You told me that one of your favorite topics is collaboration, and I think you have a community in Ghana where I think you're also co-founder. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, the Beyond Collective. It's an
Beyond
art
collective, was it? Yeah.
Yes, that we, some friends and I, created together about 9 or 10 years ago. And it started because we didn't have enough platforms at the time that for creatives to show their work and to share their reflections. And yet we realized how important it was going to be in terms of social growth and social change, because it's not something that is being taught in our schools. And so as individuals, none of us had everything that it would take to create such a collective. You need money, you need resources, you need work, so many things. But we realized that if I can do it alone, if you and I, Otmar, put our resources together with X and Y, then we can do something that is bigger than the sum of everything that we put together. I can take over, bring in my strength. You can bring in your strength. Another person, and we were able to make it like that. And after that, so many things grew and changed because of it.
Yeah, that is, I think, also part of our journey from the last 8 weeks. If I would have started it alone to start a podcast, it wouldn't have been the same. I couldn't even interview you because I wouldn't know that you wanted to start a podcast too. Actually, to explain it, that we made a course together, a London Real Academy with Brian Rose, and we both started a podcast now. And that's how we met each other, and that's how I got the idea to interview you. By the way, I want to put the link to your podcast so that people can find you and can listen also to your podcast, because I think it fits perfectly together to this, what we talked today, obviously, because we talked a lot about creativity, and I want to share what you want to tell to the world.
Thank you, Otmar.
Yeah. So thank you again also for showing up in my life and showing up on my podcast. And I really enjoyed our talk. And
me too. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I would really enjoy to have another conversation with you. So have a great evening, I guess.
And you too.
See you soon.
See you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.